this week's news, school chaplaincy remains a political football. Iraqi Christians call for a homeland and take up arms. And plans are made for a church in the world's smallest island nation.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, it's great to have you with us for this week's episode of Record in Focus.
That's right, welcome to the program. Now, Kent, you've got what sounds like a fascinating interview with Pastor Barnabas Mam, who's a Cambodian pastor.
Yes, that's right. He lived through the killing fields in the 1970s. Sadly, many of his friends and family didn't make it. But I've read his book, Danielle, and yes, there's tragedy there, but I couldn't put it down because really it's an incredibly inspiring story despite the pain.
Yeah, look, I'm certainly looking forward to hearing it. And of course we have politics in focus again this week.
Yes, that's right. Lyle Shelton will be sharing his perspective from Canberra, and we'll be hearing from Trafford Fischer too.
Yes, certainly will, Kent. He says he has some tips for improving a stale marriage.
Okay, well, news time.
Thanks, Kent. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back for Australia's school chaplaincy program, which is now the subject of a tussle between the federal and state governments. After the High Court ruled in June that the chaplaincy program's funding model was unconstitutional, the federal government organised to instead funnel the $244 million through state and territory governments. But now, according to the ABC, both South Australia and the ACT have refused to sign up to the new deal. They want secular welfare workers to be funded under the program, while Prime Minister Tony Abbott has affirmed that the Commonwealth's support only covers chaplains representing various religious backgrounds. Under the new funding arrangements, 580 secular welfare workers will have to leave their jobs at the end of this year. Serious concerns remain for Christians and other minority groups targeted by ISIS militants in Iraq and Syria. The recently appointed Anglican Primate of Australia, Dr. Philip Fryer, in one of his first public statements, has announced a fundraising appeal for those fleeing ISIS fighters. He says aid agencies cannot cope with the more than 1.2 million people who have fled the violence so far. And in another development, 3 senior members of the federal opposition have called for immediate aid to Christians in Iraq. Tanya Plibersek, Chris Bowen and Chris Hayes say they also support the aspirations of Assyrian and Chaldean Catholic Church leaders. They want to establish a politically autonomous province in Iraq's Nineveh region for the indigenous Christian population. Some Christians in northern Iraq say they're sick of being victimised and have joined up with the Iraq Army or Kurdish forces to fight against ISIS militants. The Conservative World Congress of Families went ahead in Melbourne despite protests last weekend, but not before key politicians had withdrawn from the event. After 4 venue changes due to security and other concerns, the controversial Catch the Fire Church, which is associated with the right-wing nationalist Rise Up Australia Party, agreed to host the event. The move prompted the Federal Minister for Social Services, Kevin Andrews, and Victoria's Attorney-General, Robert Clark, to announce their withdrawal from the event. While protests continued outside, the World Congress of Families regional event focused on traditional marriage and the well-being of children, not shying away from controversial topics including abortion. After months of building in popularity on social media, the latest fundraising craze is the Ice Bucket Challenge, a fun way to raise awareness and funding for research into ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease.
Write you a check.
That check is for me.
Even church and political leaders have embraced the trend, although many are taking the soft option, choosing to make a donation rather than braving the icy indignity of the notorious bucket.
We feel that this is such a worthy cause. We're proud of our young people who are getting involved and bringing an awareness of this despicable disease to people around them. But rather than have the ice water thrown over our heads, we thought it might be more beneficial if we actually write a check and send it in.
Concerns have been raised by some Christian leaders, however, that some of the research into ALS involves the use of embryonic stem cells. Other critics have reflected on the lack of water in some parts of the world, where each bucketful is precious and may represent hours of walking to and from the nearest clean water source. In 2004, the discovery of unusually small humanoid bones in Indonesia led scientists to proclaim a new stage in human evolution, which was popularly called the Hobbit. But according to Penn State News, careful examination of the bones by an Australian-led international team of researchers has led to a much more mundane explanation. They say the skull fragment measurements are not quite as small as previously reported, and that the bones have features consistent with a diagnosis of Down syndrome. The original person would have been about 4 feet tall, a height consistent with modern humans in that region. The research has been published in the prestigious PNAS scientific journal. A congregation of just 40 people is looking forward to the building of the first Seventh-day Adventist church in Nauru, the world's smallest island nation. According to church leaders in the South Pacific, a block of land has been acquired and building materials are being gathered. The process has been complicated, with Nauru's parliament needing to approve the arrangements and also legally register the Adventist church in the country. Church leaders in the region say they're now waiting on approval for the building plans and are looking for volunteer builders to help in the construction. Nauru has an area of only 21 square kilometres and boasts a population of 9,400. Only one other country is smaller, the Vatican. Western Australia has celebrated its very first Hymn Fest, sponsored by the Adventist Church together with the Bible Society of Australia. The event at Wesley Uniting Church featured the Adventist Orchestra and Choir and gave ample opportunity for audience participation. The Perth event builds on the success of the hymns and songs of praise events held in New South Wales.
I will cling to the old rock and rock, and exchange it someday for a crown.
This year, the event was hosted by ABC journalist Geraldine Doog. For centuries, painters have expressed their beliefs and their religious struggles through their works. A new TV series produced by Adventist Media Network explores the stories behind some of history's most famous works of religious art.
This is my favourite Rembrandt. It's one of his final works and it portrays the story of the prodigal son. For decades, Rembrandt was fascinated with this story. He made numerous sketches and illustrations until he painted this life-size masterpiece in 1668.
The series is being broadcast weekly and is also available via Hope Channel's new on-demand service.
This painting was intended to help people better understand the true nature of the cross of Calvary. It was intended to shock and generate emotion. You have the face of Jesus looking at you with tears coming down his cheeks. Not for himself, but for you and me.
And that's this week's news. Kent.
Thanks, Danielle. We'll be straight back after the break with Politics in Focus and some tips for reviving a stale marriage. Don't go away.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, can you really face death with good cheer? How to make and keep friends in your adulthood. PayPal and Tesla founder Elon Musk on his amazing world. Tracing the footsteps of Jesus in Israel's far north. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Welcome back. And joining us now from the nation's capital is Lyle Shelton from the Australian Christian Lobby. How are you, Lyle?
Well, thanks, Kent. Even better now that spring has sprung and Canberra's long winter is over.
It's great, isn't it? Now, Lyle, last weekend we saw the World Congress of Families struggle to get off the ground in Melbourne. There was a lot of protest and some fairly negative media coverage in the lead up to the event. What's the correct balance here, do you think, between the free speech of the event speakers and the free speech of their critics?
Well, we do need to find that balance, Kent. Unfortunately, probably some of the organisation wasn't that great. It saw key politicians pull out, and I support them in their decision to pull out of that event. And also the World Congress of Families itself eventually, right at the last minute, also pulled out from the event. So it was left to run under the auspices of another organisation. I think we've got to work really hard on the organisation of things. If we're going to put controversial issues out into the public square, like the supposed or alleged link between abortion and breast cancer, and I'm not saying if there is or isn't, although there's studies that suggest there are, we should be able to discuss these freely in a democratic society. But if we're going to put those issues out there, we've got to make sure that we've prepared the groundwork for it. And I'm not sure that was done, and I think that generated a lot of unnecessary hostile publicity.
Yeah, OK. On to another issue, Lyle. A few weeks back we saw the unfolding of the baby Gammy saga. There were claims there that the Australian parents of a Down syndrome baby born through surrogacy abandoned that baby. Is this just a tragic one-off incident, or does this point to larger issues with surrogacy?
No, this definitely points to larger issues with the practice of surrogacy, Kent. We're seeing many Australian couples going overseas to places like India and Thailand to acquire babies through surrogacy, and that involves the commercial exploitation of very poor women. Surrogacy is a very complex arrangement. It often involves multiple adults in the conception and with a emotional stake in a child. It really is ethically fraught, and it's one of the big issues that's facing a nation, and we've really got to sort this ethical issue out very quickly, because it has huge ramifications for children. OK, so obviously you're a bit wary about commercial surrogacy. What about a situation where it's sort of between friends and family members? Is that perhaps doable? Look, it can sound very lacking in compassion to say no to this, but I would say no, even on an altruistic basis, and we do have some states in Australia that allow altruistic surrogacy. It just is incredibly complex, and it creates a deep biological and emotional entanglement in the life of a child, which I just can't see ending well for the majority of cases. There might be exceptions, but hard cases do make bad law, and I think we've got to ensure that our laws uphold the best interests of the child, and I'm just not sure that surrogacy provides that.
Yeah, OK. Well, thanks for your time this week, Lyle.
Pleasure, Kent. Thanks for having us.
And now it's over to Danielle Sinnott.
Well, if you've got some stale bread in your freezer, that might be a lot better than a stale marriage, isn't that right, Traff?
It is. It is. I'll go with the stale bread. Look, sadly, there are occasions when our marriages, it's not a bad word, it gets stale. They just get a bit dry. But
we all go through it.
Yeah, look, we all go times when the relationship just loses a bit of its buzz. I think the first thing we've got to do when that happens, because I think there's three. There's a boredom rut, a boredom stale. There's a conflict stale where we just get lost in all that. I think to intimacy, staleness, we get stale in intimacy and we lose all that excitement. Let's talk about the boredom one.
All right.
We call it a rut. We're falling into the boredom rut. I think there are some things we can do, Danielle. We really can. I think the first one is acknowledge it. You say, hey, we're in a rut. Because if we say, nah, everything's fine, and we just roll along, it's going to leave us worse off.
Yeah, so we can kick the white elephant out of the room.
Let's get real. Let's get real. And I say, okay, look, let's face it, we're in a rut. Good step. And now we can do something about it. I think the second thing is avoid blame and shame. If we do the blame thing, well, it's your fault, so we're kind of externalising the problem. If we say, oh, this is terrible, and we kind of look inwards and we do a lot of shame about it, then again, it's not going to work. I think we've got to open, honestly say, hey, let's address this without blame, without shame. We've developed a rut. We've just got into the cycle, busy life, the kids, whatever it is. Let's get real. So I think the next thing we've got to do is some mutual fun activities. Now, why I say mutual is this. If I have a fun activity that I love doing, which is water skiing, and my wife hates it, I say, yeah, let's go water skiing. That's fun. She's going to die.
It's not overly reciprocal, is it?
It's just not on. And I have to tell you, I know this guy who loves snow skiing. And he just lived for snow skiing. So he takes his wife snow skiing. She hated it. She sat in the little villa thing for 5 days in a row. The whole thing died. No. You've got to be a mutual fund. Even if it's a bit crazy, do something crazy, you know. Dream up something that's a bit out there, you know. Go shopping in shorts that you'd never go shopping. Just do something. Push a trolley backwards. Do something. Let's have some fun here.
Something to kick it a bit.
Yeah, let's get a kick. Make a date. Because I think one of the issues is why it gets stale is like bread in the freezer, it sits there too long, you know, and we just roll along in this kind of pattern. We've got to change this. We've got to make a date, even if it's a mini date. Now, the drama is we often make dates, we don't stick to them. And, a work appointment comes up. We've got to stick to them, right? So if you make a date, so nothing takes its place.
So you're talking about, too, making the relationship a priority during that time?
Let's initiate this. And the other thing is hide the remote. Get rid of the, switch the telly or switch the laptop. It's crazy.
I know, but it's so prevalent.
Tea time, work. No, put it away. Put it away. Our marriages, our relationships, our friendships are so important. We've got to look after them. So we've got to get energised about this.
It is true, and we're living in such a time of disconnection. That it's
we've got to fight this stuff. We've got to stay connected. Yeah, exactly.
So we've just got to keep it alive and spice it up, and we should be right.
Yeah, let's get some action out there. Let's have this happen. Exactly.
All right, you heard the expert. We'll be right back after the break.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
In the 1970s, when the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, there were about 10,000 Christians in the country. But a few years later, by the time the Khmer Rouge had finished, there were only 200 left. And one of those is here today with us this morning, Pastor Barnabas Mam. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's a very depressing way to begin an interview, isn't it? But it was a very depressing time for you personally and for your country's history.
Yes, but depression never ends in depression. It will end in something wonderful. If we know that the Lord is at work.
Yes. You were personally sort of imprisoned in the killing fields, weren't you? In a labour camp there.
Yes, I was in a detention camp at the eastern part, near the Vietnamese border.
I mean, you're alive today, and a lot of people aren't. How many people did die during that killing fields period?
1.7 million Cambodian died in the killing field. And in my prison, out of 300, only 127 survived.
Wow. So less than half.
Less than half.
Wow. So how was it that you were one of the ones who survived? What was it? Good luck, strategy, divine leading? What?
It was the divine protection, the divine leading, because I sensed that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ, was so close to me. Because in a place where there were no pastors, no elders, no other Christian to talk to, God was the only person that I could rely on. So He led me.
This was a pretty tough time to be a Christian in Cambodia. In the late 60s and early 70s, communism was becoming much more, popular. And you actually, because you were brought up a Buddhist originally, but you actually became a communist and an atheist.
Yes, so for me, there were two conversions. First, my conversion from Buddhism to communism. Then in April 1972, the second conversion was from communism to Christianity. So I was born again in April 1972.
How did that happen? Just tell us.
I was assigned to spy on a gospel rally in Phnom Penh, the capital city. The speaker was the late Dr. Stanley Mooneyham of World Vision. Then, as I heard the story of the prodigal son, so God just touched my heart, and then I saw myself that I was that wayward son. Then I accepted Jesus, I ended up in trusting Christ as my Lord and Savior.
So you turn up to this evangelistic meeting to spy.
Sure.
and God just turns your heart.
Yeah, He turned
180
my heart, He
degrees.
turned my way around.
That must have been a shock for you and for your family and for your friends and for the communist groups you were involved with.
Yes, the communists were not happy. My life was wanted, but my communist mentor, the one that recruited me, decided to release me. But he paid the price. He paid the cost. He got arrested.
Okay. Now, you weren't actually associated with the Khmer Rouge group of communists, were you? It was a different group?
There were different groups, you know. The group that I associated with was the group that meant just good for the nation. They would never ban the education, no the media, no the banking system. They just wanted a society with equality and dignity. People are respected. But they were the first to be, you know, assassinated by Pol Pot.
It's often what happens, unfortunately, that it's the most ruthless groups that gain power, and that's what happened here.
Yeah.
Can you just try to explain to us, because I've certainly found it really hard to understand, and I imagine some of our viewers will find it too. What was the Khmer Rouge trying to achieve in Cambodia that they thought killing 1.4 million people would actually make the country a better place?
They believe that only a country of the peasants that would be a pure and a pure communist society. So they try to create that society of peasants.
So people like you, and we wear glasses because we're older men now.
Yeah.
We would be suspect under that regime. Anyone with glasses was assumed to be educated and...
Yeah, my best friend ever, the one who was my church musician, he got killed because he wore glasses. Wow. He was suspected of being an intellectual, an educated person.
And even someone, you explain in your book here, Church Behind the Wire, that even someone with a name that is longer than one syllable was also considered suspect.
They considered those that belong to the rich family, belong to their arch enemy, the capitalists. So to become revolutionary, you got to chop as many syllables and your name down. So I chopped my name from Suvan to Van.
Yeah, that was it.
It became monosyllabic.
But you became known as Barnabas, which is the name you go by now. How did that happen?
You know, I started to write songs of praise and worship in Cambodian style, so that the new Cambodian church at the Thai border and the refugee camp could enjoy singing them. Then a missionary in Bangkok decided to communicate with me with this name Barnabas, for fear that all the men would fall into the hands of the police.
Oh, so this was a secret name for you to... Okay.
And then it became my official name because my family fled to Thailand in 1985. We got to register with the United Nations. So it became official in 1985.
Yeah. This is a really fascinating part of your ministry for me, that you have actually participated in the cultural rebuilding of Cambodia through preserving those old folk tunes and folk instruments, but using those to compose gospel songs.
Not just the gospel song, but also all the parables on Jesus now are in the form of Cambodian folk tune. Everyone hears it, he sings it. Yeah.
And even Buddhist-style chanting and things like that for the Lord's Prayer, I think.
Yes, the Lord's Prayer, more like that one, because we feel that it's not wise, it's not appropriate to play the guitar at the funeral service, you know. But to chant that one, it sounds so Cambodian. It is acceptable to the Cambodian culture.
So this is an important part of your ministry, isn't it, with Ambassadors for Christ, that you believe it's important for national ministries to reach their own people using locally indigenous appropriate methods. Yeah.
So I'm encouraged by, you know, the missions and of Ambassador for Christ to see nationals and ministries, so we have freedom to create and design any material that are culturally fit, because it's the contextualization of the gospel.
Wow. One thing I find really hard to understand, Barnabas, is that you escaped from Cambodia, like you said. You ended up in Thailand in a refugee camp, and you were there, and you were married, you had children. It was 8 years you were in that
8 years in Thailand.
8 years.
Yeah, I married Buri in 1980, and we fled to Thailand in 1985. Yeah. So it was a family of 5 members.
So you're there with a family of 5, like you say, then you were there for 8 years while your girls grow up to young womanhood.
Sure.
and they don't remember their old country, and you had opportunities perhaps to go to Canada or America or Australia or Italy, but you chose not to. You chose to go back to Cambodia. Why?
You know, actually, humanly speaking, we prefer either America or Canada, but somehow we made a mistake. I believe that this is a divine mistake.
Yes.
And now we thank God that because of that mistake that we decided to come back to Cambodia, God has opened more doors for us to minister to many parts of the world.
Wow. And you've planted, what, about 40 churches in Cambodia since then?
First, I started a church, and that church had about 40 daughter churches. But then God called me to be with Ambassador for Christ. Now I'm training church planters all over Cambodia, and even some Khmer-speaking people from Vietnam. And now, in the last 15 years, there are more than 400 churches planted all over Cambodia.
Wow. Because people have this perception that, it's very hard to preach the gospel in Asian countries where it's traditionally Confucianist or Buddhist or Muslim, but it seems that you've found that people are quite receptive.
The key is, as long as our audience see that Christ is not an alien, Christ is not imported from outside, Christ is for them. Christ is identified as one of them, then they will accept the gospel. So my job is to make Christ known as He is for Asian people also, not just for the Westerners.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, living in Bible times was probably much closer to the way traditionally people live in Cambodia than how we live in the West. So,
a lot of culture in the Bible are Asian culture.
Yes, well, it's an Oriental culture.
Oriental culture.
That's fascinating. Now, I really enjoyed this book, Barnabas. If our viewers want to get hold of it, do you know where they can get hold of it in Australia?
Kurong Bookstore in Australia.
Kurong Bookstore. And also, is it online?
It's online. E-book is online. Amazon. You just visit Amazon. You can order online, or you can get the e-book.
Okay. Kurong, Amazon. I personally recommend it because I've read it cover to cover. Found it very inspirational. And look, I find your story and your ministry very inspirational too. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Pastor Barnabas Mam, for your time. We'll be back straight after the break.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
Welcome back. You know what, Danielle, what really strikes me about Pastor Barnabas Mam is that even though he's been through some pretty tough times...
Do you think tough and unimaginable, I'd say?
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But somehow he still just seems so positive. I just can't get over that. It just reminds me of that verse in the Bible, the joy of the Lord
is my strength.
Yeah, the joy of the Lord is my strength. He just seems to live out that verse in his life.
Yeah, he certainly does, Kent. Well, if you'd like to see the interview with Barnabas Mam again or share it with a friend, the video is right there at our website, record.net.au, as are all the other segments of this week's program.
Or any week.
That's right.
Thanks for your company. We'll see you next time on Record in Focus.
Don't forget to stay in touch. God bless.